If you are a PvE focused player, you'll be spending a lot of time in the Vanguard section of Destiny 2. Accessible via the blue icon on the director screen, the Vanguard section contains a mashup of activities from throughout the lifetime of Destiny 2. If you are a returning player, you'll remember the Strikes playlist being the core Vanguard activity. It is still around, but it is now called the Vanguard Ops playlist. The only difference between then and now is that the Vanguard Ops playlist contains some of the Battleground activities from Season 13. Bungie is using this playlist to keep some of the seasonal activities around. Ordinarily, these activities go away completely when the next annual expansion launches. We received confirmation in the February 9th TWAB that the PsyOps Battlegrounds from Season 16 and Heist Battlegrounds from Season 19 will also be added to the Vanguard Ops playlist when Lightfall launches at the end of February. I think the decision makes a lot of sense, and I prefer that over completely removing activities from the game. The Vanguard Ops playlist is a rotation list of standalone missions. These all follow the same basic formula. Load into activity, receive straightforward instructions on what to do next, then tear through enemies until reaching the final boss fight. Since strikes are match-made activities, the mechanics and difficulty of the fights are toned down compared to something like a raid, which requires a lot more coordination among the team to complete. This activity is fairly laid back. You can jump in, run a few strikes, and pretty much just chill out. There are modifiers which rotate on a weekly schedule. These add a little variety and help keep things interesting from week to week. To see the current modifiers, select the Vanguard Ops playlist and then hover over the icons above the title for a description of that modifier. The Vanguard Ops playlist is available for all players for free. The next tier up from the Vanguard Ops playlist are Nightfalls. Nightfalls are a more difficult version of strikes and change on a weekly rotation. These include more modifiers as well as champions to ruin your day. You can choose from a few different difficulty levels. The higher the difficulty, the greater the likelihood you'll receive some good rewards. For example, there are legendary weapons only available from completing Nightfalls. They are also a good source of exotic gear and upgrade materials. As a solo player, you can match with other players in the lower difficulties. Once you move into Legend or Master, you'll need to pull together your own team of 3 and you need to prepare yourself for the difficulty spike. There are a lot of negative multipliers, the enemies hit like trucks, and you are very squishy. Unlike the Vanguard Ops playlist, free players cannot access Nightfalls on weeks where the Nightfall is associated with paid DLC. As you can see in the example on screen, this week's Nightfall is the Glassway Strike, which is tied to the Beyond Light DLC. As a result, I'm not able to access the Nightfall this week on my free account. Once you've mastered all the earlier Nightfall difficulties, you may want to step up to Grandmaster Nightfalls. Grandmaster is the most challenging difficulty, and it's such a huge spike over Master that Bungie broke it out into a separate option. Grandmasters are not available at the start of each season. They'll unlock a few weeks into it. GMs are geared toward the more hardcore player base. They require you to make good decisions with your armor and weapons as well as properly coordinate with the rest of your team. You'll be at a heavy disadvantage due to the extensive list of negative modifiers applied to your team. To top it all off, if all 3 players die in a darkness zone, the whole team is kicked to orbit and you must start all over again. For all this effort, you are well rewarded. Regular Nightfalls have a pool of unique weapons to chase. GM Nightfalls offer adept versions of these weapons. Take out all the champions in the Nightfall and you will be showered with loot in the end. There are other Vanguard Ops-like activities in the game. These exist outside of the Vanguard playlist, even though they seem like very similar activities. My guess is that Bungie does this so they can sell new content with each expansion as opposed to lumping everything into the Vanguard Ops playlist where it doesn't stand out as much. It's all about marketing. The 3 activities I'm going to quickly hit on are Nightmare Hunts, Empire Hunts, and the Wellspring. I fully expect another activity to be added to this list once Lightfall is released. Nightmare Hunts are basically the same thing as strikes, except that they are Shadowkeep themed and require ownership of the Shadowkeep DLC. Honestly, there isn't much more to say about them. You don't get some awesome loot for completing a Master Nightmare Hunt. This is an activity you'll probably want to run once just to check it out, but you likely won't see much reason to come back for more. There is always the possibility that Bungie will show these legacy activities some love and give us a reason to run them. You can launch nightmare hunts by selecting them on the moon. Empire hunts are the same thing as nightmare hunts, which are the same thing as Vanguard strikes. The only difference here is that Empire hunts are Beyond Light themed and require ownership of the Beyond Light DLC. You'll actually have to run these at least once as part of the Beyond Light campaign. After that, you can select some difficulty options for better rewards. I assume that Bungie is going to lump all the hunts into the Vanguard Ops playlist at some point. There isn't really a compelling reason to run through these otherwise. You can launch Empire hunts by selecting them on Europa. The Wellspring shipped with the Witch Queen DLC and offers a bit of variety over the hunts. Instead of being a 3-player activity, the Wellspring is a 6-player activity. There are a couple of different variations on the activity which change on a rotation schedule. The formula follows the standard Destiny 2 playbook of shoot everything that moves. Witch Queen weapon patterns drop from the Wellspring, so you've got some motivation to come back, at least until you unlock all the Witch Queen weapon patterns, or only the ones that you care about. While I could see Nightmare and Empire hunts being lumped into the Vanguard Ops playlist, the Wellspring is different enough to stand on its own. You can launch the Wellspring by selecting it on the Throne World.